You think romance is a dozen roses? Think again. Medieval lovers took things to a whole other level. We're talking about a lady who unknowingly ate her lover's cooked heart, served to her by her super jealous husband. And get this, one knight actually carried his dead beloved's heart around in a fancy silver box for years, even taking it on a crusade. Another super famous hero willingly hopped into a cart meant for criminals, totally wrecking his public image, all for a chance to see the queen he adored. And one prince even got himself smuggled into a guarded tower inside a basket of flowers, just to reach the woman he couldn't live without. Modern dating is shaking. Number 8. The silent sufferer's unwavering love. Okay, picture this. You're Enide, and you're married to Eric, who's basically the knightly equivalent of a rock star in King Arthur's court. He's strong, he's brave, he's famous, and he is totally, utterly obsessed with you. So obsessed, in fact, that he starts skipping out on jousts, tournaments, and all his knightly duties just to hang out with you, his amazing wife. Sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, not so much for Eric's reputation. Soon, whispers start. People are saying Eric has gone soft, that he's recreant, which was a big medieval insult, meaning he's a slacker knight. Eric hears these rumors, but somehow he twists it in his head. He starts thinking that Enide is the one complaining, that she thinks he's not man enough anymore, or that she's sad he's not out there winning glory. He gets it into his head that she doesn't truly love him, or worse, that she regrets marrying him. Total misunderstanding. But Eric, being a medieval dude with some serious pride issues, decides he needs to test her love. And oh boy, does he test it. So what's his grand plan? He tells Enide they're going on a journey. A super dangerous, long and uncomfortable journey. And here's the kicker. She has to ride ahead of him on her own horse, wearing her best dress, not some practical traveling clothes. And the biggest rule, she is absolutely, positively forbidden to speak to him. Not a word. Not even if, like a giant fire-breathing dragon, is about to eat him. She's supposed to just stay silent and let things happen. He's basically saying, if you love me, you'll obey me without question, even if it means I get turned into night kebabs. So off they go. And surprise, surprise, the road is packed with dangers. They run into groups of robber knights, treacherous barons, and all sorts of baddies who want to either rob Eric, kill him, or capture the beautiful Enide. Each time, Enide sees the danger coming. She knows she's not supposed to speak. She's tormented. If she stays silent, Eric could die. If she speaks, she breaks his command, and in his mind fails the test. What does she do? She loves him too much to let him get hurt. So, time and time again, she breaks her silence. She cries out, "My lord, look out! Knights are attacking." Or, "Sir, there's an ambush ahead." Eric, being Eric, gets angry each time. "I told you not to speak," he scolds her, after he, you know, defeats the enemies she warned him about. He even takes away the horses of the knights he defeats, and makes her lead this growing herd of captured steeds, making her journey even more miserable. This goes on for ages. Enide endures his coldness, his harsh words, the constant danger, hunger, and exhaustion. She's miserable, but her love for Eric makes her keep going, and it also makes her keep breaking his silly rule to save his life. One time, Eric is so badly wounded, he falls from his horse, seemingly dead. A count finds them and tries to force Enide to marry him. Enide, heartbroken and believing Eric is gone, refuses, wishing only to die herself. When the Count tries to strike her, Enide lets out a loud cry of grief, and guess what? Eric wasn't quite dead. Her cry actually rouses him. He jumps up, kills the Count, and they escape. Finally, after so many trials, and Enide proving her loyalty and love over and over again by both her endurance and her willingness to defy his command to protect him, Eric starts to get it. He realizes that her warnings weren't signs of disrespect or a lack of love, but the absolute proof of it. She risked his anger because she couldn't bear to see him harmed. Her silence was meant to be obedience, but her words were acts of pure love. He finally sees how much she suffered for him, and because of him. Eric apologizes. Well, as much as a proud medieval knight apologizes, he recognizes her incredible devotion. Their love, tested to its absolute limit, comes out stronger. They return to Arthur's court. Eric is no longer seen as a slacker, and Enide is celebrated for her loyalty and love. She didn't just follow an order. She suffered, she worried, she protected, and she endured, all because her love for Eric was the real deal, even when he was being a total jerk. That quiet strength, that willingness to suffer for love, and then break the rules for love. That's a medieval romantic gesture of epic proportions. Number 7. The prince who crossed the sea for a love he'd never seen. Imagine falling in love with someone purely based on hearsay. No profile pics, no DMMs, just stories. That's what happened to Geoffrey Rudil, a real-life fancy dude, the Prince of Blay, who was also a troubadour, one of those poet-musicians who sang about love. This was in the 12th century, so like ancient times. Geoffrey was just chilling in his castle in France, probably writing some bangers about unrequited love, when pilgrims started coming back from the Holy Land, from places like Antioch. These travelers were full of stories, not just about holy sites, but about the people they met. And they kept talking about this one lady, the Countess of Tripoli. They went on and on about how incredibly beautiful she was, but more than that, how kind, virtuous, noble, and just, generally awesome she was. They described her as basically perfect. Geoffrey listened to all these tales, and the more he heard, the more he became completely and utterly smitten. He fell head over heels in love with this countess, a woman he had never seen, never spoken to, who lived miles and miles away across the sea. He developed what was known as amour de loin, or love from afar. This became his whole entire thing. He started writing poem after poem, song after song, all dedicated to his distant, unseen love, the Countess of Tripoli. His songs were famous, filled with longing and a deep, almost spiritual yearning for her. He imagined her, dreamed of her, and his love for her became the central theme of his life and his art. Now, for most people, this might have just stayed a fantasy, a poetic inspiration, but not for Joffre. This love consumed him. He felt this overwhelming need, this deep ache in his soul to actually see her. He believed he couldn't truly live, or perhaps even die peacefully, without having laid eyes on the woman who had captured his heart from so far away. So, what's a love-struck prince poet to do? He decides to go on a crusade. Joining a crusade was a way people traveled to the Holy Land, and Tripoli was in that direction. It was a dangerous, arduous journey, but for Joffre, it was his only chance to reach his beloved. He took the cross, as they said, and set off on a ship, sailing across the Mediterranean Sea, all fired up with the hope of finally meeting the Countess. But here's where it gets super tragic. The journey was tough. The sea voyages back then were not luxury cruises. They were cramped, often unhygienic and perilous. Joffre fell gravely ill on the ship. Like, seriously, life-threateningly ill. He was weak, fading, and it seemed like he might die at sea, never achieving his heart's desire. As the ship finally approached Tripoli, Joffre was on the brink of death. His companions, knowing his story and his desperate wish, rushed to inform the Countess. They told her about this noble prince from France, the famous troubadour Joffre Rudel, who had sung of his love for her for years, who had undertaken this perilous journey just for the chance to see her, and who now lay dying on a ship in her harbor. The Countess, who had likely heard of this famous poet who dedicated his art to her, was deeply moved. What a thing to hear! She hurried to the port, to the ship where Joffre lay. By the time she reached him, he was barely conscious. But as she came to his side, as he opened his eyes and saw her, really saw her for the first and last time, a flicker of life returned to him. In that moment he knew it was her, the woman he had dreamed of, sung about, and traveled so far to see. He reportedly regained enough strength to speak. He thanked God for allowing him to live long enough to behold her. He expressed his joy and contentment at having finally seen his love. And then, with her there in her presence, Joffre Rudel died. Some versions of the story say he died in her arms. Imagine the Countess. This man had idolized her from afar, undertaken an epic journey, and died having achieved his life's singular goal. To see her face, she was, as you can imagine, incredibly grief-stricken by his death and the profound love he had shown. The story says she was so affected by his devotion that she arranged for him to have a magnificent burial in Tripoli, in the Church of the Templars. And some legends even say that, overwhelmed by the tragedy and the power of his love, she herself decided to enter a convent renouncing the world. Joffre's grand gesture wasn't a gift or a daring rescue in the traditional sense. His gesture was the journey itself, fueled by an intangible love, a testament to the power of an ideal. He risked everything and ultimately gave his life for a single moment of connection with a love that had, until then, existed only in his heart and his songs. It's a heartbreakingly romantic story of ultimate devotion to an idea of love. Number 6. The Prince in a Basket of Flowers. This story is like a medieval fairy tale romance, starring Floris and Blanchefleur. Florus was a pagan prince. His dad was a king in, say, Spain, though the stories vary. Blanchefleur, whose name means white flower, was the daughter of a Christian noblewoman who had been captured and was now a companion to Florus's mom, the queen. So, Florus and Blanchefleur grew up together, side by side, in the royal court. They were best friends from day one, learned their lessons together, played together, and, as they got older, they fell madly, deeply in love. Like can't live without each other in love. Now, Florus's dad, the king, was not thrilled about this at all. Blanchefleur was Christian, and she wasn't exactly royalty in their eyes. He wanted Florus to marry some fancy pagan princess. So he comes up with a plan to get rid of Blanchefleur. While Florus is sent away to school, the king sells Blanchefleur to some merchants. These merchants then sell her to the emir of Babylon, which in these stories often meant Cairo in Egypt, who was known for having a seriously impressive tower full of beautiful maidens, basically a very exclusive, very well-guarded harem. Blanchefleur, being super beautiful, ends up there. To cover his tracks, the king tells Florus that Blanchefleur died. He even builds a fancy tomb for her, all elaborate and convincing. Florus is, as you can imagine, completely devastated. He's heartbroken, doesn't want to live anymore, and is actually about to kill himself at her supposed grave. Seeing her son in such despair, Florus's mom can't take it anymore. She confesses the whole thing. Blanchefleur isn't dead. She was sold, and here's who bought her and where she might be. Florus, despite being furious with his parents, is also overjoyed that Blanchefleur is alive. He immediately decides he's going to find her, no matter what. His mom gives him a special cup and a ring that had belonged to Blanchefleur's mother, things that might help him. So, off he goes on his epic quest. He travels for ages following clues, until he finally reaches the city where the emir has his Tower of Maidens. This tower is intense. It's super tall, heavily guarded, and basically impenetrable. The emir is the only man allowed in. Florus manages to make friends with a guy named Darius, who is the warden of the bridge leading to the tower, or in some versions, a guard at the tower itself. Florus, being a rich prince, uses his gold and charm. He learns that Blanchefleur is indeed in the tower, and her best friend there is a maiden named Clarice. He also learns that the emir is planning to choose a new wife very soon, and Blanchefleur is a top contender. Time is running out. How on earth is he going to get into this fortress of a tower? Darius comes up with a crazy, super romantic, and incredibly risky plan. Every year, or perhaps more often, giant baskets of fresh flowers were delivered to the tower, either for all the maidens or specifically for the emir's favorite, the plan. Florus would hide inside one of these massive flower baskets. He would literally be smuggled into the enemy's stronghold, surrounded by fragrant blooms like a human love bomb. So they get the biggest, most beautiful basket, fill it with gorgeous flowers, and Florus squeezes himself inside. It's a huge gamble. If he's discovered, he's dead. No questions asked. The basket is carried into the tower. In some versions, it's supposed to go to Clarice, Blanchefleur's friend, who is in on the plan, or becomes in on it. In others, it's just a general delivery and he has to figure out how to get to Blanchefleur's room. One popular version has the basket delivered to Clariss's room. When Blanchefleur comes to visit Clarisse, they tip the basket, and out tumbles Floris. Blanchefleur, thinking he's a ghost because she heard he died of grief for her, or that he was told she died, faints. Floris faints too, probably from relief and being cramped in a basket. Clarisse revives them, and there's a joyful, tearful reunion. They are together again, in secret, right under the Emir's nose. They manage to keep their reunion a secret for a little while, hiding Floris in Blanchefleur's chambers. But, of course, they eventually get caught. A jealous servant or a routine check reveals Floris. The Emir is furious. He orders them both to be executed. They are brought before him, ready to die. But then something amazing happens. As they stand there facing death, their love for each other is so obvious, so powerful. Floris offers to die if Blanchefleur can be spared. Blanchefleur insists on dying with him or for him. She even tries to protect him from the executioner's sword with her own body. The Emir, who was all ready to be a terrifying tyrant, finds himself incredibly moved by their devotion. He sees Floris's special ring, the one his mother gave him, and realizes this isn't just some random dude. This is a prince who risked everything. The nobles at his court also plead for mercy for the young lovers. Softened by their profound love and bravery, the Emir has a change of heart. He pardons them. Not only that, but he knights Floris on the spot, and then, in a truly grand gesture of his own, he marries them himself. He even gives Blanchefleur her friend Clarisse as a handmaiden. In some versions, Floris and Blanchefleur's love is so inspiring that the Emir and his whole court convert to Christianity. Floris and Blanchefleur return to Floris's kingdom, eventually become king and queen, and live happily ever after, hiding in a flower basket to sneak into a dangerous, forbidden place. That's not just brave, it's an incredibly poetic and risky declaration of love. Floris literally surrounded himself with the symbol of romance to reach his beloved. It's like something out of a dream, but for them, it was a real life or death gamble for love. Number 5. The star-crossed lover who built a bower of love. This one's from a super unique medieval story called Aucassin et Nicolette. It's part prose, part song, and all about young, passionate love facing some serious obstacles. Aucassin is the son of Count Garin of Beaucaire in France. Nicolette is a beautiful girl. He's totally crazy about the catch. Nicolette was bought as a Saracen, Muslim and slave girl, though she was baptized Christian. Aucassin's dad, the Count, is absolutely against them being together. He wants Aucassin to marry a princess or some high-born lady, not a former slave girl, no matter how lovely or good she is. Aucassin, however, is not having it. He is so obsessed with Nicolette that he declares he'd rather go to hell with her than to heaven without her. Yes, he actually says that. He even refuses to do his knightly duties, like defending his father's lands from attackers, unless his father lets him see Nicolette. Talk about lovesick. Count Garin, being a stubborn medieval dad, locks Nicolette up in a tall tower to keep her away from Aucassin. He also throws Aucassin in prison for a bit when he refuses to fight. Nicolette, being resourceful and brave, eventually manages to escape her tower. She uses bed sheets and towels to climb down, injures her ankle, and then limps off into the nearby forest to hide. Meanwhile, Aucassin is eventually let out of prison, often because he finally agrees to fight and wins a major battle, only for his dad to break his promise about Nicolette. When Aucassin finds out Nicolette has escaped and run off into the woods, he's frantic. He knows the forest can be dangerous, and he desperately wants to find her. He gets on his horse and rides into the forest, searching everywhere, calling her name. He's so distraught, he even has a clumsy fall from his horse and dislocates his shoulder. Ouch! Now, here's where Nicolette's incredibly sweet and thoughtful gesture comes in. She's hiding in the forest, and she hears from some shepherds that Aucassin is looking for her, and that he's injured. Her heart aches for him. She wants to help him, to guide him to her, and to offer him some comfort. But she also knows they're still in danger of being found by his father's men. So, what does she do? She decides to build him a little shelter, a bower, or a lodge. Using her own hands, she gathers branches, green leaves, lilies, roses, and all sorts of beautiful wildflowers from the forest. She weaves them together, creating a small, fragrant, and lovely little hut. It's a haven, a place of beauty and peace in the wild woods. She builds it carefully, making it pretty enough that Aucassin will know it couldn't have been made by just anyone. It had to be her. It's her way of saying, "I'm here, I love you, I'm thinking of you, rest here." It's a secret message and a loving gift, all in one. She even leaves a few signs, so he knows it's safe. Aucassin, still searching and now in pain from his shoulder, eventually stumbles upon this beautiful little bower. He sees how lovely it is, how artfully it's made with flowers and fresh leaves. He immediately knows it must be Nicolette's handiwork. He's so touched and so exhausted that he dismounts, lies down inside the leafy shelter, and overcome with emotion and the sweet scent of the flowers, he weeps. He rests there, feeling her presence even though she's not physically there. And then, as if by magic or just good timing in the story, Nicolette, who had been hiding nearby watching, sees that he's found her bower and is safe. She comes out of her hiding place, and they are reunited. Tears, kisses, joy, the whole 9 yards. The bower she built becomes the site of their happy reunion. Nicolette, then being awesome, even uses herbs and her knowledge to help fix Aucassin's dislocated shoulder. The story doesn't end there, of course. They have many more adventures, get separated again. She gets kidnapped by Saracens who turn out to be her long-lost royal family, and eventually find their way back to each other for a final happy ending where Aucassin becomes count and marries his beloved Nicolette. But that bower, it's such a tender gesture. In a world of grand battles and heroic quests, Nicolette's act of building a quiet, beautiful shelter for her injured love is so personal and heartfelt. She didn't have gold or armies. She used what nature provided and her own loving hands to create a space of comfort and a beacon of her love. It's a reminder that sometimes the most romantic gestures are the ones that are simple, creative, and come directly from the heart, meant to soothe and reassure the one you love. Number 4. The hazel branch message of a secret love. Let's talk about one of the most legendary and tragic love affairs of all time, Tristan and Isolde. Their story is complicated, dramatic, and full of forbidden passion. Tristan is a noble knight from Cornwall, nephew to King Mark. Isolde the Fair is an Irish princess. Tristan is sent to Ireland to bring Isolde back to Cornwall to marry his uncle King Mark. On the voyage back, Tristan and Isolde accidentally drink a love potion that was intended for Isolde and King Mark on their wedding night. Oops, big oops. From that moment on, Tristan and Isolde are bound by an irresistible, all-consuming love for each other. This is a massive problem, because Isolde is now married to King Mark. So, their love is adulterous, dangerous, and has to be kept incredibly secret. If King Mark finds out, it could mean death for both of them. Their lives become a series of clandestine meetings, narrow escapes and heartbreaking separations, all while trying to hide their overwhelming passion from the suspicious eyes of the court. Because they can't be together openly, they have to get super creative with their communication. They develop secret signals, codes, and ways of meeting that won't arouse suspicion. And one of the most famous and poetic of these secret messages involves a hazel branch. This particular incident is beautifully told in a short poem, or lie, by Marie de France, called Chèvrefoil, which means honeysuckle. Here's the scene. Tristan has been banished from King Mark's court. Again, this happens a lot in their story, because people keep suspecting their affair. He's heartbroken and desperate to see Isolde, even for a moment. He learns that Isolde and her retinue will be traveling along a specific path through the forest, on their way to a festival or some royal event. This is his chance. Tristan goes into the woods, finds a hazel branch, and with his knife he carefully cuts it and shaves one side flat and square, making it smooth. Then, on this prepared surface, he carves a message. Some versions say he carves his name, Tristan. Others say he carves a specific message that only Isolde would understand. The lie of Chèvrefoil itself implies the message was about their interconnectedness, comparing them to the honeysuckle vine and the hazel tree. The honeysuckle, he wrote, or implied, wraps itself so tightly around the hazel that if you try to separate them, both will die. That's how intertwined their lives and love are, deep, right. Once his hazel branch ogrim is ready, Tristan places it strategically in a stream or brook that runs alongside the path where Isolde's party is expected to pass. He knows Isolde well. He knows she's observant and that she would recognize his handiwork or a specific sign that it was from him. He hopes she'll see it, understand its meaning, and find a way to meet him. It's a risky move. If someone else finds it and figures it out, they're busted. Sure enough, as Queen Isolde rides along the path with her ladies in waiting, her eyes scan the surroundings. She spots the carefully prepared hazel branch floating in the water or placed by the stream's edge. She immediately recognizes it as a signal from Tristan. Her heart probably did a massive leap. She knows what she has to do. She cleverly makes an excuse to her retinue, saying she wants to dismount and rest for a bit, or perhaps wander off into the woods to pick flowers, or some other believable reason to get away from her escorts. Her loyal maid, Brangaine, who often helps the lovers, might have assisted in creating a diversion. Isolde manages to slip away and finds Tristan waiting for her in the depths of the forest, just as he hoped. They have a secret, stolen meeting. It's filled with both joy at seeing each other again and sorrow because their situation is so impossible. They talk, they embrace, they reaffirm their love. Tristan tells her about the message on the hazel branch, how he compared their love to the hazel and the honeysuckle, how they cannot live apart. It's a brief, precious interlude of happiness in their otherwise tragic love story. After their meeting, Isolde has to return to her party before she's missed too much. Tristan has to go back into exile. But for that short time, they were together, all thanks to a cleverly carved piece of wood. This gesture, the hazel branch message, is so romantic because it's not about grand expense or public display. It's about ingenuity, intimacy, and a deep shared understanding between two people who are desperate to connect. It shows how love can find a way even in the most restrictive circumstances. Tristan used his knowledge of nature and his skill with a knife combined with his profound understanding of Isolde to create a secret love letter that only she could decipher. It's a symbol of their unbreakable bond, as intertwined and inseparable as the honeysuckle and the hazel tree he wrote about. It's a quiet, clever, and deeply personal gesture that speaks volumes about the depth of their forbidden love. Number 3. The knight who rode the cart of shame for his queen, Sir Lancelot. The name itself screams legendary knight. He was King Arthur's best friend, his champion, the most skilled, most chivalrous, most famous knight of the Round Table. Basically, he was the medieval equivalent of a superhero, movie star, and Olympic gold medalist, all rolled into one. And he was desperately, secretly in love with Arthur's wife, Queen Guinevere, and she with him. This, as you can imagine, was a recipe for drama. One day the wicked Meleagant, a rogue prince with a serious bad guy vibe, hatches a plan and successfully abducts Queen Guinevere. He takes her away to his impenetrable castle in the land of Gore. King Arthur is distraught. Sir Gawain, Arthur's nephew, immediately sets off in pursuit. Lancelot, hearing the news, is beyond furious and devastated. He absolutely has to rescue his queen. He also sets off, riding like a man possessed. During his frantic pursuit, Lancelot pushes his horse so hard that the poor animal collapses and dies beneath him. Now, Lancelot is on foot, still armed and armored, but with no way to quickly continue his chase. He's in a terrible situation. He needs to reach Guinevere. He needs to save her. Every moment counts. As he's rushing along the road, fuming and desperate, he comes across a dwarf. And this dwarf is driving a cart. Now, in medieval times, a cart wasn't just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol of utter disgrace. Riding in a cart was a punishment reserved for the worst criminals, thieves, murderers, traitors, on their way to execution or public shaming. people would jeer, throw mud and garbage, and generally treat anyone in a cart like dirt. For a renowned knight like Lancelot, whose honor and reputation were everything, to be seen in a cart would be the ultimate humiliation. It would be social suicide. Lancelot, desperate, asks the dwarf if he's seen Queen Guinevere pass by. The dwarf, being a bit of a nasty character, says, "Yes, I saw her, and if you want to know where she is, and if you want a ride, you have to get into my cart." Lancelot is faced with an agonizing choice. His love for Guinevere, his urgent need to save her, is battling against his knightly honor, his pride, everything he stands for. The story says he hesitates for just 2 steps. He actually takes 2 steps debating it in his mind. 2 steps. Then, his love for Guinevere wins out over his pride. He decides to do it. He climbs into the shameful cart. As the dwarf drives the cart along, people see Sir Lancelot, the great Lancelot. Riding in this degrading vehicle, they are shocked. They mock him, they insult him, they point and laugh. Look at Lancelot, the famous knight, brought so low, they jeer. Lancelot endures it all. He swallows his pride, suffers the humiliation because his love for Guinevere and her safety are more important to him than his own reputation. He is willing to be publicly shamed if it means he can find her. This is a massive sacrifice for a knight of his stature. Eventually, the dwarf gives him the information, or leads him part of the way, and Lancelot continues his quest. He faces incredible dangers, fights off Meleagant's knights, crosses a sword bridge, a bridge made of a single giant sharp sword edge over a raging river, ouch, and finally reaches Meleagant's castle. He finds Guinevere. And here's a kicker that shows how intense the rules of courtly love were. Guinevere is initially cold to him. Why? Because word had reached her, through a witness who saw the cart incident, that Lancelot had hesitated for those 2 steps before getting in. In her mind, if his love was perfect and absolute, he wouldn't have hesitated even for a second. He would have jumped in immediately. Shame be damned. So she gives him the cold shoulder for a bit, even after all he went through. Talk about high standards. Lancelot is, of course, heartbroken by her coolness, but he eventually explains himself, or she gets over it, and they reconcile. He then fights Meleagant, defeats him, though Meleagant sometimes cheats, or gets bailed out by his dad, leading to a later rematch where Lancelot finishes the job, and rescues Guinevere, returning her to Camelot. The gesture of riding in the cart of shame is so powerful because it demonstrates the depth of Lancelot's devotion. He was willing to sacrifice the thing most precious to a knight, his honor and public image, for the sake of his love. He chose love over reputation, service to his lady over his own standing in the world. Those 2 hesitant steps might have annoyed Guinevere for a hot minute, but the act itself was a profound testament to a love that was willing to endure absolutely anything, even profound public disgrace. It's a classic example of the extreme sacrifices demanded by the ideals of courtly love. Number 2. The Crusader who carried his lady's heart in a casket. This story is about the Chatelaine de Coucy and the Lady of Fayel. The Chatelaine de Coucy, was a real historical family of French nobles, and several were poets and crusaders. So the legend likely attached itself to one of them, possibly Guy de Souraud. The story, however, is pure medieval romance, full of passion, secrets, and tragedy. The Chatelaine de Coucy, a dashing and poetic knight, was deeply in love with the beautiful Lady of Fayal. And she, in turn, was deeply in love with him. The problem: the Lady of Fayal was married, and her husband, the Sire de Fayal, was a stern, possessive, and ultimately very jealous man. So, like many medieval love stories, this was a secret, forbidden affair, fraught with danger. They had to be incredibly careful, meeting in secret, exchanging messages, their love flourishing in the shadows. Despite the risks, their love was profound. Then came the call for a crusade. Many knights and nobles from Europe were heading to the Holy Land to fight. The Chatelaine de Coucy, being a valiant knight, decided he must go. This meant a long and perilous separation from his beloved Lady of Fayal. It was a heartbreaking prospect for them both. Before he left, they had a tearful farewell. They exchanged vows of eternal love and fidelity. And they made a solemn pact. The Chatelaine promised the Lady of Fayal that if he were to die while on crusade, far away from her, he would ensure that his heart, the very symbol of his love for her, would be returned to her. It was a common poetic idea that the heart was the seat of love, and to send one's heart was the ultimate token of devotion. So, the Chatelaine went off to the crusade. He fought bravely, as knights in these stories do. But, alas, tragedy struck. He was mortally wounded in battle. As he lay dying, his thoughts were only of his beloved Lady of Fayal. He remembered his promise. He called his most loyal and trusted squire to his side. With his dying breaths, the Chatelaine gave his squire very specific instructions. After his death, the squire was to carefully remove his heart. This heart was then to be embalmed to preserve it. Then it was to be placed inside a small, precious casket. The stories often describe this casket as being made of silver or ivory, sometimes adorned with jewels, or perhaps engraved with their intertwined initials, or a symbol of their love. Along with the heart, the Chatelaine instructed the squire to place a lock of the Lady of Fayal's hair, which he had carried with him as a cherished token, and a final letter, a testament of his undying love and devotion, written to her as he faced death. The loyal squire, though grief-stricken at his master's death, carried out these wishes meticulously. He had the Chatelaine's heart embalmed, placed it reverently in the ornate casket with the lock of hair and the farewell letter, and then began the long and sorrowful journey back to France, specifically to the castle of Fayal, to deliver this most precious and tragic relic to the lady. Imagine the squire's journey, carrying this small box that contained not just a physical heart, but the embodiment of a great and secret love. He finally arrives in the region of Fayal, intending to deliver the casket secretly to the lady. However, disaster strikes. The Sire de Fayal, the jealous husband, had always been suspicious of his wife and the Chatelaine de Coucy. Perhaps he had spies, or perhaps it was just bad luck. but he somehow intercepted the squire. The Sire de Fiel, realizing the squire was from Coucy and likely carrying messages, seized him and demanded to know his business. The squire, perhaps under duress or caught off guard, revealed his mission, or the sire discovered the casket. The Sire de Fiel took the casket from the squire. He opened it. Inside he found the embalmed heart of his rival, the love letter, and the lock of his own wife's hair. His suspicions were confirmed in the most gruesome and undeniable way. He was consumed by a furious, vengeful rage. The chatelain's gesture, the sending of his heart, was meant to be the ultimate proof of his eternal love, a final connection with his beloved. It was a deeply romantic, if morbid by our standards, act of devotion intended to bring her a kind of comfort, a physical reminder of their unbreakable bond. He wanted his very essence to be with her, even in death. He could not have foreseen the horrific turn of events that his loving gesture would precipitate at the hands of her jealous husband. And that, as they say, is another part of the story, leading to an even more shocking outcome for the Lady of Fiel herself, related to this very heart. But the act of arranging for his heart to be enshrined and sent to her, that was his final, poignant, and utterly medieval, romantic gesture. Number 1. The lover whose heart was eaten by his beloved. Brace yourselves, because this is probably one of the most shocking and gruesome romantic gestures, or rather a horrifying act born out of a romantic entanglement in all of medieval literature. This is the legend of the eaten heart, and it stars the troubadour Guilhem de Cabesting. Guilhem de Cabesting was a real historical troubadour from the late 12th and early 13th centuries, known for his beautiful love songs. In the legend that grew around him, his Vita, a short, romanticized biography, he was a knight in the service of Sir Raymond of Castelroussillon, a powerful lord in the south of France. Sir Raymond was married to a beautiful lady named Soramonda, or Soramonde, or Margarita in some versions. As often happened in these troubadour tales, Guilhem, being a sensitive poet and a charming knight, fell deeply in love with his lord's wife, Lady Soramonda. And she, captivated by his songs, which were all secretly dedicated to her, and his devotion, fell in love with him too. They began a passionate secret affair. It was the classic, courtly love triangle. The beautiful lady, the adoring poet knight, and the powerful, unsuspecting, that first husband. Guilhem wrote exquisite poems and songs for Soramonda, praising her beauty, her virtue, and his overwhelming love for her. These songs, though perhaps veiled in their language, were clear declarations of his passion for those who knew how to listen. Their affair continued for some time, a dangerous dance of stolen moments and secret glances. However, secrets in a medieval castle are hard to keep. Sir Raymond, the husband, eventually started to get suspicious. Maybe he noticed the way Guilhem looked at his wife, or the particular fervor in his songs, or perhaps gossiping servants whispered in his ear. His suspicion grew into jealousy, and that jealousy festered into a dangerous rage. One day, Sir Raymond confronted Guilhem. In some versions of the story, Guilhem, trying to protect Soramonda and deflect his lord's anger, cleverly, or so he thought, pretended that his songs were actually for Soramonda's sister Agnes. This might have bought him a little time, but Raymond was not truly convinced. His jealousy was too deep-seated. Consumed by a desire for revenge, Sir Raymond hatched a horrific plan. He invited Gilham to go hunting with him, or perhaps ambushed him while Gilham was out riding alone. Whatever the setup, Raymond attacked his unsuspecting rival. He killed Gilham de Cabesting in cold blood. And then, in an act of unspeakable vengeance, he cut out Gilham's heart. He also, in some versions, cut off his head to display later. But the horror didn't end there. This is where the story takes its most infamous turn. Sir Raymond took Gilham's heart back to his castle. He then secretly summoned his cook and gave him the heart, instructing him to prepare it as a special dish. He told the cook to season it well, to make it savory and delicious, and to disguise what it truly was. He might have said it was the heart of a deer or some other choice game. That evening at dinner, Sir Raymond presented this specially prepared dish to his wife, Lady Soramonda. He told her it was a rare delicacy he had procured just for her. Unaware of the horrifying truth, Soramonda ate the dish. She reportedly found it to be wonderfully tasty, perhaps the most delicious thing she had ever eaten. She might have even commented on its unique and excellent flavor. After she had finished her meal, Sir Raymond, with cruel satisfaction, revealed the truth to her. He asked her if she had enjoyed the dish. When she said yes, he told her what she had consumed. "You should indeed find it delicious," he might have said, "for you have just eaten the heart of Gilham de Cabesting, the man you loved so much." In some versions, he even produced Gilham's severed head as proof. Lady Soramonda was, as you can imagine, utterly horrified beyond words. The realization of what she had done, what had been done to her lover, and what her husband was capable of, was too much to bear. Her grief and despair were absolute. In a final tragic act of devotion to her lost love, Soramonda declared that after having tasted something so precious, so noble as the heart of Gilham de Cabesting, she would never allow any other food or drink to pass her lips. She would not defile the memory of that sacred, if horrific, meal. And then, according to the legend, she threw herself from a high window or balcony of the castle, falling to her death on the stones below. She chose to die rather than live with the horror and the grief. The story usually ends with the news of this terrible tragedy spreading throughout the land. Other nobles and ladies were outraged by Sir Raymond's cruelty. The King of Aragon, a powerful figure in the region, was said to have been particularly incensed. He had Sir Raymond arrested and punished. And in a final poignant tribute to the tragic lovers, the king ordered that Gilham de Cabesting and Lady Soramonda be buried together in a single tomb, often at the entrance of a church, so that all who passed by could remember their love and pray for their souls. Their tomb became a kind of shrine for lovers. While the gesture of eating the heart was forced upon Soramonda by an act of monstrous cruelty, the entire tragic episode stems from the intensity of Gilham and Soramonda's forbidden love. Gilham literally gave his heart for his love, albeit unwillingly, at the moment of death. Soramonda's reaction, her vow, and her subsequent death transformed her into a martyr for love in the medieval imagination. It's a dark, gruesome tale, but it highlights the extreme passions and perils that were seen as part and parcel of true love in some medieval narratives, where love could lead to ecstasy, poetry, and sometimes the most horrifying of ends.